Hey guys, today I'm going to do something a little bit different. This is going to be I'm going to try to keep it under 30 minutes today. We'll see how that goes. No comments, no supers, no nothing. This is just going to be a maybe a 30-minute clip on Dread today. We're going to be talking about what is Dread game. I have done episodes before, full like 2-hour episodes on Dread, so I thought I might just do one sort of intensive, quick hit video. It seems like you guys are really liking the clips, so I'm going to go ahead and just work on doing some short clips today. I had a few scheduling issues today, so that's why there's no live stream. I am going to be back tomorrow with Myron Gaines, and we're going to be talking about his new program, some of the things that he's working on right now. It sort of coincides with the game topics that I've been talking about recently as of Sunday and all that. But I figured I'd try something a little bit different today. This is an experiment, so bear with me. I'm not really good, I guess, at short form. I tend to go over, as most of you guys already know, and then I get sidetracked with a lot of super chats. And I appreciate the super chats, really. If you want to support this stream, if you want to support this channel, you want to support me or my work or whatever, everything will be in the description of this video, so you can go ahead and check out how to support this channel if you want to be a Patreon member, or you want to just simply, help me out, right? So anyways, today we're going to be talking about Dread, and the reason I wanted to get into Dread is because it was something that I wanted to get into. I wanted to talk about last Sunday. The thing about talking about aspects of game is that it's complex. Like, there's a lot of different sort of avenues you can go when we're talking about the application of the red pill. Now, just to remind you, just a little bit of a review here. Remember that red pill is the praxeology. Red pill is the awareness. Red pill is the theory. Game is the practice. And game, as I said last Sunday, can be pretty much anything you want it to be, right? I mean, it's everybody has game. And how effective that game is, where you learned that game from, how it's working for you, yada, yada, yada. That's the real issue. So when I'm talking about game in this sense, I'm talking about it from the perspective of, pickup or let's just say intersexual dynamics. Okay. So there you have it. Just, I'm laying that out for you right now. So what is Dread? The reason why I'm getting into this right now is because I just was responding to a Twitter exchange that I was having, and myself and I think Ryan Stone was in it as well. And so I'll just read you the first part of it. As a matter of fact, I don't think I really need to get too detailed. It's a very brief tweet anyway. So it says, Dread game is one of the biggest scams in the manosphere. I don't blame guys for falling for it because on the surface it appears plausible. But give it 5 minutes thought, and you'll see that Dread game is one of the most pissy, reactive, and needy things a man can do. And this is not something that I haven't never heard before. This is it's sort of that. I think reactive is really the adjective to focus in on here, because a lot of guys, when they understand the concept of Dread as opposed to the application of Dread, that's where there's kind of a disconnect. So one of the things about Dread, and I think a lot of guys get sort of hung up on the idea of the word Dread, because it sounds manipulative, it sounds oppressive, it sounds ominous, because it's you're going to dread her, you're going to dread her into loving you, and that is the opposite of really effective dread. But the concept of dread is rooted primarily in competition anxiety, and it's rooted in varying values between men and women, and other men and other men, and other women and other women. So when we're talking about dread, the concept, rather than the quote unquote game, which I'll talk about here in a little bit, but when we're talking about dread as a concept, dread is something that everyone does, that everyone has. We have value. We have values. We place values on things. So, for instance, if I have a very expensive car, I might insure that car because I dread the thought of having somebody plow their big truck into it or something like that. So therefore we insure it. We have to have insurance, of course, against, death and everything else to drive a car, at least in the United States. But then you can, above and beyond that, you can insure the total value of that car. Now, why would you do that? Why would you insure anything? Why would you get renter's insurance? Why would you get homeowner's insurance? Why would you get life insurance? Because at some part of your psyche, there is this idea that the possibility exists that you might get killed or your house might get washed away in a flood, right? So you want flood insurance or you want fire insurance or whatever it is to insure your stuff, to insure the things that you have some sort of value for. Why is that? Because human beings feel a sense of value, place value in things and other people, by the way. And we want to have some sort of security, some sort of insurance against sort of this chaotic environment that might at any moment take it away from us. So there's that innate sense of dread or this innate sense of loss, our sense of value for things and I don't mean just things in the material sense. I mean that in the sense of like you value a relationship, you value your job, you value your family, I value my dogs, right? So what do I do to ensure that the well-being not only of those relationships or it could be things, the things that I care about, how do I go about ensuring that those are going to, either be replaceable or in some way preserved, let's say. So in that sense, dread keys in on that sense of value, that sense of loss. It's a fear of loss or a fear of missing out. That's another thing, FOMO, right? So there is an innate part of human nature that locks in to this fear of loss, but it's also the invested value that we have in that thing or that relationship or that person or that arrangement, right? Like maybe it's your job for sake of argument here. So there's always going to be a sense of, comparison, and there's also going to be a sense of value in that. Now, take that and let's move that into the realm of intersexual dynamics. So when you are valued by a girl, when a woman puts some sort of investment in you, there is what's called competition anxiety. It's the idea that if she doesn't consolidate on this, if she doesn't lock you down for a long-term relationship, that someone else will. She will miss out, making up for missing out. I've done several essays about that as well. So that sense of invested value in you as let's say a solution for her reproductive problem or her consolidating on an optimized hypergamy. I know that's a mouthful, but what I mean by that is locking down a high value guy. And so there has to be some kind of emotional investment in that for her to have value in you, to have placed any kind of value in you, or you to have value to her. So as a result of that, there is a FOMO, right? Fear of missing out, fear of loss, competition anxiety. These are principles of game, but they're also red pill principles as well. So the concept is that if a woman is invested in you, there has to be some sense of urgency, some sense of competition, some sense of where is this going? I'm sure I think I've done an episode or two about the talk. When a woman comes to you and says, "Where is this going?" It's the talk. We need to have the talk, and usually that's a point at which where if the girl that you're talking to is a plate, that's when she's either going to fall off or she's going to be ride or die girl. In fact, if she's having the talk, she's trying. That's what we would call a frame grab. So I'll talk about that at some other point. But as far as dread is concerned, that talk is motivated by dread, and dread is a sense of loss. Let's just say, or it's the potential. It's the insight required to place value in that relationship or that thing, and there's that fear of loss, because when you think about how women invest in a guy in terms of like long-term investment, long-term security, as I've said before, and I think I mentioned this on the last podcast or the one before that for women between the ages of say 22 and 24, that is their highest peak potential. That is where their sexual market value is at its highest. So when we look at how brief a window women have for peak agency, for peak power, for peak marketability. Again, I'm making this in terms of commodifying things, but in terms of numbers and figures, women on whole as a large as a lifetime kind of thing here, they have a very brief window over the course of, say, like 80, 85 years. Like, what's the average lifespan of a woman, right? So between the ages of, say, 21 and maybe 24, let's just spread it out a little bit more, but I usually peg peak marketability at about 23. That's a very brief window to have peak sexual selection for a woman. And that is if she maximizes her potential. She stays hot. She understands her agency. She understands that her sexual agency is perishable. Most don't, right? I mean, most women are overweight. Most women are, 75 to 80% of women in the United States are overweight or morbidly obese. But even still, at that point, they have a very brief window during which they can maximize that potential. For men, it lasts a whole lot longer than that. But so within that point, there is a sense of urgency, whether that's psychological or that's sort of just subconscious or whatever. There's a sense of urgency that says, if I don't lock this guy down, if I found a high value guy, hypergamy cannot afford to wait. It cannot afford to pass by a golden opportunity. So there is an associated sense of loss that comes along with that. Now, this is not something women lose sleep over, or they're consciously aware of, or it's something that's sort of a cognitive process, but it is sort of like a subroutine. It's like the lizard brain part here. So there's this sense of urgency that I think increases as women get towards their epiphany phase, like 29 to 31 years old, somewhere around there. And then it comes to a head at that point, or else women are so clueless that they believe that their sexual agency is evergreen, or it should be, thanks to social constructionism and everything else. But as a result of that, women feel a sense of dread, a sense of urgency, a sense of, or a fear of loss. And I hate using the term dread anymore because people tend to think it's like ominous and it's some sort of manipulative, you're a manipulative bastard for even bringing up the term dread. Because it sounds wrong. It feels bad. Granted, it's semantics, but it feels bad. So when we're talking about dread, there's always going to be that sense of, and women will use dread on you as well, especially for guys who are in the lower 80 percentile, right? The majority of men who are beta males who have to invest most of themselves and most of their value in one single woman rather than spreading it around. Now, maybe that's changing societally right now, and I'm sure people have some sort of, I'm sure you're going to comment about something like that. But the fact remains is that there's a lot of guys who are, most men live necessitous lives when it comes to intersexual dynamics. She's the only one for me. She's high value. I'm going to put everything I can. I'm going to do everything. We're conditioned from the time we're young children to place that kind of, to put women and womankind on a pedestal. And as a result, we tend to overinvest ourselves. And as a result of that, women use dread on men all the time. All the time. They'll use it in media. They'll use it in songs. They'll use it in stories. They'll use it in movies. They'll use it in whatever. In our popular mythology, women use dread on men all the time. So when a man figures that out and says, you know what, maybe this is something that's applicable to us, maybe we can do something with this, then we're rat bastards for doing that. And if you are a properly conditioned blue pill beta man, it feels wrong to even mention or presume that you could use dread. And I understand. Now, here's the criticisms of dread. Now, what dread is in terms of game, conceptually, that's what it is. And what is dread in terms of game? Well, a lot of guys get carried away with it, especially in the pickup artist, the modern contemporary pickup artist community right now. Dread seems like an ultimatum, and it is really satisfying to that kind of sense of pro-revenge, right? There's sort of like this retribution, like I'm going to use dread and really make it. That's overt dread, first of all, and then second of all, it's more of an ultimatum. And in that case, the guy who's talking here said, it's pissy and it's reactive and it's like you're falling into her frame. If in terms of overt dread for people who don't know what they're doing or don't know what it's about, it seems like I'm going to be the man and put my fist down and you better shape up or ship out, lady. Like that's the form of, like, I'm a high value guy. And if you can't recognize that, then, well, looks like you better hit the road. Like that is like major bonehead PUA form of dread. So, and that's what usually anybody fixates on, particularly critics of game, particularly feminists, particularly blue pill guys. They say, well, you know, that's really obnoxious and arrogant and conceited, and how dare you? How dare you? So what happens in that case is it ends up being an ultimatum, and ultimatums are essentially declarations of powerlessness. If you don't do what I feel so powerless that if you don't do what I tell you to do, then this is over. I wash my hands of the whole thing. And that sounds pissy and whiny and like you're a pouty little child, and I get it. Overt dread seems abusive. It seems like what an abusive like husband or boyfriend would do. And that's not the proper application of dread. And when I have written about dread, I've always said this, that there's two kinds of dread. First is the overt kind, which is the one I just mentioned here, which is sort of like do what I say or I'm gone, and playing on that sort of fear of loss. Well, first of all, that doesn't work unless that woman actually has an invested value in you in the first place. So if you're using it as a form of game, like in the early stages of like getting together with a plate or a girl or a girlfriend or whatever, that's probably, yeah, it's going to sound pissy and reactive, and you're leaning over into her frame. Got it. But passive dread is another thing. And if you've read my first book, The Rational Male, in the very first chapters, there is a chapter called Imagination. And imagination is the single best tool in your PUA, game, red pill, whatever, toolbox. Prompting a woman's imagination is key to a good long-term relationship. It's key to good game. It's key to so many elements. Like last week when I was talking about what are the three sort of linchpins or keystones, I guess, of game. And that is frame, who's qualifying to who, qualification, and imagination. So imagination is the one that I'm focusing on here. So what has to happen for any kind of dread to even take place, that woman has to have some sort of invested value in you to work in the first place. Because if you're just some guy on the internet, if you're just some beta orbiter, if you're an OnlyFans pay pig or simp or whatever, the value of your attention is minimal. But if you're a high value guy and that woman happens to be, say, 28 and just entering into her epiphany phase, that contextually is going to create a greater sense of value invested in you, particularly if you have a lot more going for you, if you have a lot of potential. So if you've met a woman and she's 27, 28 years old and she's this side of the epiphany phase, or as some other people are calling it, what is she saying? There's some blogger, some authoress is calling it, I forget what the hell she was calling it. It's the epiphany phase, basically. It's the wake up phase. It's almost like a crisis point. And I'm happy that women are finally sort of recognizing the epiphany phase, but there it is. But if you've got a woman that's just sort of inside the epiphany phase, she's going to have a different set of priorities to place value on you. And she is probably more likely to invest a little bit more quickly, let's say, because that sense of urgency, knowing that her sexual agency is perishable. That's why when women get to the epiphany phase, they tend to be much more, let's say, susceptible to dread, because there is that sense of need and urgency to consolidate on a guy who's high value. So if that, and then also having the discernment to know whether that guy is or he isn't. And then that's where it's usually at this time where you'll hear women say, oh, men are so infantile. Men are commitment phobic. Men are afraid, or they're fearful of a strong, independent woman. They're threatened by a powerful woman, right? And so it's at that point during the epiphany phase that the dread is sort of setting in for women, because it's not so much it's this idea that they need to shame guys, or they need to find some way to sort of force guys into their frame and into their life plan, now that they're getting to the point where it's slim pickings, right? Where they're experiencing less sexual selectivity as a result of the next crop of 22-year-olds coming into the sexual marketplace and displacing them. So yes, when it comes to dread, there is an age-specific contextualness that goes along with all of that. So you've got that, something to think about, right? But passive dread is this. Passive dread is using women's imagination to sort of get them to lock into you that much more. And some guys say, well, why would I want to do that? Why do I care? Well, if you don't care, then don't worry about it. This is not the video for you. But if you want to understand dread a little bit better, I wish there was a better word for it, but it's this sense of value investment into that guy. The best form of dread is third-party dread. It is the best form of dread or competition anxiety is a direct form of social proof, of pre-selection. So if her girlfriends are saying, her girlfriends are saying, whoa, Rollo Tomassi, man, Rollo really looks good these days. Rollo's really, what's he doing for work? When her friends are interested in you, whether it's directly or nuanced, let's just say, interest in you, that is a form of dread. You didn't have to do anything. It's just that your value translates to third parties. So and this is Royce here. Royce actually brought this up way back in 2009 or 2008, I think. And if you go and you read the 16 Commandments of Poon, one of those commandments is make her jealous. Now, there's lots of ways to make a woman jealous. And jealousy implies an investment. So a woman does not get jealous of you or jealous of other women or has a problem with other women coming on to you, the waitress at the bar, or the restaurant, whatever, even flirting with you. She doesn't have a problem with that if there's no value invested in you in the first place. So for dread to exist, for a fear of missing out to exist, that woman already has to have put some sort of value into the relationship that she has with you. Mystery is famous for having said this, that a woman cannot fall in love with a man until she feels jealousy for that guy. And women hate this, and blue pill guys hate this, but it is absolutely 100% true. And the reason they hate it is because everyone along the way, from the time they were small children, has told them to put women on a pedestal and to make women feel comfortable, to make women feel trust towards you. You've probably heard this a million times, right? Well, I can't have sex with you because I don't feel trustworthy. I don't feel comfortable with you yet. I don't feel a sense of rapport with you yet. I don't feel familiarity with you. There's this idea that guys completely get the whole thing backwards, right? There's no sense of urgency, but there's all this really oversold sense of familiarity and loyalty. And I'm going to prove my quality to my lady, right? That's how you get white knights, right? I'm going to go and I'm going to protect you, my lady, and I'm going to provide. Like I would be. It's like you go and you prove yourself as being like the perfect boyfriend or the perfect guy for her before you even get to the bedroom, before you even go on the date. Because up here, that's where guys are at. They're like, I need to make her feel comfortable. Because every woman, like I've asked lots of women what it is they want, and they want to feel comfortable. And they want a guy with confidence, and they want a guy who's trustworthy, and and anything that applies to the beta buck side of the hypergamous equation, like alpha seed beta need, anything that applies to the beta need side is what those guys are sold on. And the overwhelming part of that is a need for trust, a need for comfort, a need for this, and it's familiarity. And what they don't realize is that familiarity breeds contempt, first of all, but it is also anti-seductive. So when we're talking about hot arousal, genuine desire, hot guy in the foam cannon party, right? That's the guy that I want to go and have sex with. There is no consideration. It doesn't even enter into a woman's head that she needs to, sit down there and trust the guy and whatever. He was hot, she was drunk, I was hot. One thing led to another, right? That's the trope, I guess. But when it comes to guys being upset about dread, it's usually because it is in direct conflict to what they've been taught for most of their lives. So it sounds pissy. It sounds like you're playing games. It sounds like you're being disingenuous. And God forbid you make a woman uncomfortable by in any way fostering a sense of value in her via jealousy, via dread. So when that woman at the bar, or when that woman at the restaurant, the waitress at the restaurant is flirting with you, what most guys will do in that situation is try to downplay it, or they'll try to blow off the girl, or they'll try to do in some way downplay the flirtation of that girl that's interested in him, because they feel that if they don't, then they're going to lose the girl. That, well, if I did any of that, it's one of the reasons why a lot of guys have a problem with the red pill and have a problem with game, like formalized game in the first place, is because well, if I did that, Rollo, she would leave me. If I even tried that with my wife, she would divorce me. If I even experiment. And so what's interesting to me is most guys are so locked into, like most beta guys are so locked into that overvaluation of the relationship that they're in, that they won't experiment with the things that would probably improve their relationships. So demonstrating higher value while you are in a long-term relationship is much more difficult than when you're outside of that long-term relationship. It's much easier for you to facilitate dread when that woman doesn't know as much about you as she does when you're her husband or when you are her boyfriend or whatever else. Like when she becomes more and more familiar with you and your personality. Those instances of demonstrating higher value through social proof and pre-selection and dread become less and less and less because she knows more and more and more about you. And so fostering that sense or going with it is a key. That's part of the polarity of a good relationship. The key to good relationships is polarity. It is this push and pull. And most guys are very uncomfortable with that because they fear that they will lose their own investment. They fear that they will, because they value, again, it's dread. They dread the idea of using dread. Because if they do, then they'll lose that. Then she'll, no woman with any self-respect would ever, be part of that. It's, no, women use dread all the time, and you actually do too. You just don't realize that you're doing it. So when Royce in the 16 Commandments of Poon says, make her jealous, people lose their minds, but he's 100% right. Because women don't want a guy to cheat, but they love a man who could cheat. They don't want him to cheat, but they love a guy who could cheat. Because what that guy is he's high value, and it's confirmed by third parties. That's what I mean by passive dread. So when that woman at the restaurant flirts with you, that's passive dread, because it's a woman from the outside, and you are confirmed to be, at least in a sort of lizard brain sense, you are confirmed to be a guy that other men want to be and other women want to bang. And here it is in black and white because this girl is flirting with you. And good game, using dread game in a passive sense and not actively going and saying, hey, and actually actively going and flirting with that girl, having that girl flirt with you and not rebuffing that and not trying to play it down with the girl and say, no, baby, you're the only one for me. I would never go with a girl like that. That's what most guys will do. But instead of doing that, lean the other way. Say, hey, I'm sorry. It's just, look at me, right? Yeah, I guess I'm a high value guy. You can agree and amplify, and you can do lots of other different ways. There's lots of ways to sort of play on passive dread. But what guys will tell you is like, well, you can't make her so uncomfortable all the time. And if she fears that she's going to lose you, then she's going to leave you anyways, and blah, blah, blah. It's like that right there is your form of dread. It's you dreading the loss of that girl. If that's the way you feel about it, then you shouldn't be with that girl in the first place. She should be comfortable. She should be flattered that other women find you attractive. She should be flattered that other men want to be with you. And most likely she is. But you're shooting yourself in the foot because you think that it shouldn't be that way, because you're still stuck in your blue pill way of thinking, your old order way of thinking. So if she gets a little pissy, if she gets a little out of pocket because some other girl found you attractive via passive dread, what that is her sense of loss. That jealousy instinct, that means she has value in you. And also it's a confirmation of your frame, because she's sort of powerless against your charms for other women, right? So I'm not saying that you got to be like this, all full of yourself and conceited and go out and active dread would be this. I'm going to go to the waitress at the restaurant or the bar or whatever and start chatting her up and flirting with her while my girlfriend or whatever is sitting right beside me. That's active dread. Passive dread is when that female waitress, whatever, or the hot girl comes to me, starts flirting with me, and I kind of go with it. I don't rebuff it. I don't try to push it away. I don't try to in any way diffuse the jealousy of the girl that's with me. Now, I'm not going to bang the girl that's coming up and flirting with me, but I'm going to use that passive dread that she's giving me to reinforce what I've got going on with the girlfriend. This is why guys, when they self-deprecate, when you hear guys who introduce their wives or their girlfriends or whatever, whenever they're self-deprecating, that's because they think that that self-deprecation is in some way complimenting that girl, their wife or their long-term girlfriend or whatever. And it's also in the same breath diffusing that jealousy or what they think might be jealousy. And so therefore it's not about them. It's always about her, right? Oh, here's my better half. You know, here's the little woman kind of thing. You know, behind every man, there's a, you know, behind every successful man, there's a woman. And well, if you go along with that, you are only playing into the sense that you are necessitous and you're not the guy that other women want to bang and other men want to be. So that's the essence of dread right there. And remember this. I mean, there's three things you really need to consider in this. The first one is imagination, and using dread in the sense of active dread and passive dread, and looking for those opportunities for it. So there's that. There's also, remember that jealousy is required for a woman to have any kind of intimate valuation of you. She has to fear losing you. She has to fear, and I don't mean fear, she should be concerned enough. Let's just say, I hate to use it. Like, I have to be very, very careful when I use terms like I say fear or dread or whatever. Like, oh man, he's trying to push the woman. He's trying to push the woman down. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that there has to be a sense of a fear of loss, a sense that there is value in you and she doesn't want to lose that. And then there's also the complementarity that goes along with this. So when you are proven to be high value, when you are a step above her, and other women are acknowledging this, or even other men are acknowledging this, like professionally or personally, whatever, when they're acknowledging that, that is a reflection, that is an association on her. Because the guys who self-deprecate, they're saying, yeah, I'm a schmuck and a loser and you're so much better than me, honey. I can't, it must be an act of God because there's only one reason for that, right? Because I'm lower than you and you're higher than me. So thanks for lowering yourself to be with a schmuck like me. That is an insult to her. But what is a compliment to her is that other women might be attracted to you. Even after you're with her, right? Even if you've been married for 5 years, there's other women that, because you've done so much with yourself and you're such a high value guy that women are like, you know, you screw up, honey, I'm right here kind of thing. And that's not really what's being said consciously and cognitively. It's what the imagination, and that's the part 3, the imagination is working within that woman. Passive dread is based on imagination, and there's nothing wrong with stoking it. There's nothing wrong with working within that. I'm not saying don't make her comfortable and don't make her, you know, it's okay, I'm with you kind of thing. You know, reassurance is one thing. But the fact that there's jealousy means that there's love, that there is some sort of investment, that woman wants to be with you. Again, because they know that in the long term, they're going to be more necessitous for longer than you are versus the potential you have to be a high value guy. So there you have it. That is dread in a nutshell. There's a lot more to it. I'm going to kill it here at 30 minutes because I don't want to go too much over. But that is dread from a basic sense. There's other aspects of it, like how to stoke it and how to be a little bit more efficient with it. But that's a good overview. So, anyways, I am going to end this here, and I will be on with Myron Gaines very soon. If not tomorrow, then certainly by Friday. I'll be doing a one-on-one interview with him. We have Rule 0 is coming up on Saturday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, and I believe it's Ryan Stone who will be hosting. And then, of course, I will be back on Sunday for our class. Will be in session for a full live stream on Sunday. So there you have it. Hopefully you like this. Let me know in the comments. If you like these short form videos better than, you know, like you got more patience, I guess, or whatever. Again, I hate to pander to the TLDR generation, but sometimes these things work a little bit better if I can be a little bit more concise. So there you have it. That's dread today. I will get into some other topics. If you really like these, I might hit on some other things that are just sort of like, I don't want to call them info bites because they're still 30 minutes, but it is what it is. All right, guys. I'll see you later. Thank you very much for watching.